think this goes back to what Megan Gallagher and I were just discussing, is institutional racism, systemic change, the need for which has only grown as we become more aware of its effect on people, including those seeking to work in Scotland. Very simply, we want Scotland to be a place where anyone has equal opportunity to enter, sustain and progress in work in an inclusive labour market. Going back to December 2022, when we published our new anti-racist employment strategy, that's also underpinned by a series of actions that we are undertaking in partnership with key stakeholders, including evaluation of the minority ethnic recruitment toolkit to ensure that it continues to support employers in their recruitment of people from racialised minority backgrounds, development of the next stage of our anti-racism workplace training framework, which will support public and private employers to assess their own training needs and provide learning pathways that will build the capability of employers to address racial inequality in their workplace, and guidance to show how employers have used positive action to address underrepresentation, retention and progression of staff within their workforce. Now, we'll continue to encourage and support public sector leadership to build that understanding of institutional racism and its impact, and to address the recommendations of this committee's inquiry into race equality, employment and skills. This has all, of course, been taken forward in the context of our new Fair Work Action Plan, which will meet our ambition of becoming a leading Fair Work nation by 2025.
Thank you, Minister, for that response. There are quite a few bits and pieces in there, and actually in reference to one of your earlier answers about the Anti-Racism Observatory, I think there's a challenge that this committee has heard time and time again, year after year, that we don't necessarily have the right data, and we don't monitor effectively in terms of comparable data, either geographically or sectorally, or you know, any other stratifications that we might need to. So, how, with the anti-racist employment strategy and the action plan that you've outlined, and I suppose it's linked into the Fair Work Action Plan, what are the relationships between those strategies and the anti-racist observatory? Because there's no point in all of this good work going on if it doesn't join up, if it doesn't connect, and we don't actually see the impact of good work and where the gaps and where things are falling through the cracks.
I think that's exactly the point. That's exactly what we're trying to do here. Is, you know, COVID was not the only or the first example of where not having that data on intersectional inequalities led to poorer outcomes for different groups. But it's certainly what brought the AIGG together, which eventually recommended the Anti-Racism Observatory. So the impact of that will be far more wide-ranging than simply addressing only the inequalities that became clear through the pandemic. In terms of it connecting, I think it's important to note that the observatory is not, you know, the answer to racial inequality. It is part of the solution, and what it will allow us to do is to create stronger evidence-based policy. In terms of getting data, it's also not the only approach that we're taking, recognising that intersectional data requirement. You'll be aware that we're also at the moment looking at reviewing the operation of the public sector equality duty. Two key regulatory changes, including revising the current pay gap reporting duty to include reporting on ethnicity pay gaps. Pay gap reporting, of course, being an important means of driving that action to spotlight and reduce pay inequalities affecting certain disadvantaged groups.
I started off using the word diversity. Every time I was to deliver a lecture, it would be around cultural diversity. And I wondered whether I did that because it was safe, it was comfortable to use the word diversity, but actually I have now started, I have a dislike to the word now, and I think diversity is too flowery. Are we in danger, perhaps, I don't know, of losing the critical edge of issues around social justice and equality? So actually when I now deliver a lecture to the students in my institution, I will actually not actually talk about diversity. I'll say I'm going to talk to you about white privilege and whiteness theory.
Someone's giving me a hand up, and so it's this whole meritocracy debate. I want to get there on my own merit. And so when we talk about also just the whole racial literacy and understanding the issues around the challenges of being teachers, Kevin, it goes beyond just talking to our white teachers, and Melina has very skillfully included that within the Building Racial Literacy programme, because within that we need to also build the racial literacy of our BAME colleagues. How does that impact when we're thinking about anti-racist perspectives? So I'm sure you'll have heard, and it's been, I suppose, in the media a lot, the statistics for BME teachers in Scottish schools has not really changed in the past decade. Perhaps minimal changes there. So we have around about 47,476 teachers, which is around about 92.3% recorded as white, and just under 900, so about 826, which is 1.6% as BAME educators. If Scotland is to be successful in having a more diverse range of people in teaching as a career, then the profession itself must take steps to engage and employ these underrepresented groups.
Racial literacy of educators across Scotland. And what we mean by racial literacy, we're really looking at developing people's understanding of racism. And just to touch on the point about misconceptions about racism, there's still that misconception that racism is really about individual hate and prejudice, and is usually intentional, and that wider systemic but also endemic nature of racism is misunderstood. There's a misunderstanding that racism is not really an issue in Scotland, it's more an issue in England or in the US, but not really in Scotland. So in this programme, we're really trying to raise people's awareness of how racism works in Scotland, uplifting, amplifying those experiences of racism in Scottish education.
The Building Racial Literacy programme is a programme that's been co-constructed by a range of partners and has been funded by the Scottish Government as part of the Race Equality and Anti-Racism in Education programme. For our first cohort back in January, we had 73 different educators from across Scotland who completed the programme in March, and this academic term we've got another two cohorts of more than 200 educators and education system leaders who are experiencing the programme. And the programme vision for building racial literacy is that every educator in Scotland is racially literate and not race evasive. So
awareness of diversity. They've written and led several assemblies, including celebrating different religious festivals, focusing on Black History Month, and highlighting diversity and discrimination, with the common theme of be an upstander, not a bystander. They were instrumental in updating the school library to include a more diverse range of texts and authors, and are now in the process of reviewing their classroom libraries. The Pupil Diversity Ambassadors completed an audit of displays around the school, calling themselves Diversity Display Detectives.
From this meeting, the Scottish Government set up a race equality and anti-racism in education programme with a focus on 4 areas. 1. Education leadership and professional learning. 2. Curriculum reform. 3. Diversity in the teaching profession and education workforce. And 4. Racism and racist incidents. Listening to the experiences of children, young people and the guidance of the programme board, Education Scotland worked with partners to create professional learning for Scotland's educators to build their racial literacy. That means making a learning programme for teachers and practitioners to build their anti-racist skills and to increase their awareness of the impact of race on the learners, families and communities they support.